Hey, in this video, you're gonna learn everything that you need to know about acne and its causes. In just a minute, I'll break down what acne really is and its 4 primary triggers. And spoiler alert, acne is not what you've been told. Hi, I'm Jesse Gremley, and acne controlled my life for 15 years. I'm a medical esthetician and certified in healing diets and herbal medicine. Finally getting clear changed my life forever. I then created an in-clinic and an online program that has gotten thousands of people clear. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about first what acne really is. In just a minute, we're going to talk about acne triggers. So what acne really is not what you have been told. There are so many misconceptions about how acne really starts to form. And I learned this even after being a medical esthetician for 10 years. So here's what I learned, is that acne is really a genetic condition called retention hyperkeratosis. So what everyone tells you is that acne is something that happens after an initial cause or trigger. So for example, you have a hormone imbalance and then you get acne, or you eat chocolate and then you get acne, or you sleep in your makeup and then you get acne. But here's the thing, that is completely backwards. What happens is that first you have the genetic predisposition for acne, and then second you get acne. We know this is true because you have friends that sleep in their makeup and eat chocolate and have hormone imbalances all at the same time, and they wake up the next morning or the morning after that and they don't have acne. That's the really frustrating part about it, is that it's this, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm washing my face at night, I'm eating all the right things, all the things you're doing right, and you're still getting breakouts. So that's the first misconception I want to break down, is that it is first and foremost this genetic piece. So number one is the acne piece, that you're genetically predisposed, and then secondly, what comes into play is the eating the wrong thing or the hormone imbalance or whatever it might be. Again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Okay, so what acne is this big fancy word called retention hyperkeratosis. And what that means is that when we're genetically predisposed, and we got this from mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever it might be, we turn over 5 times the skin cells, dead skin cells that is, than the average normal cell. And that doesn't mean that every cell on your entire body is doing this, it's certain cells. And you might have experienced this because you tend to get a breakout in the same place over and over again. If you're like me, that happens. And I'm pointing here because that's where I always get my breakout over and over again. So basically, we're turning over skin cells 5 times faster. This is a rapid rate that's happening inside of the cell. And then the pore starts to get clogged. So these skin cells are sticky, and they start to pile up on top of each other, stick together, and before you know it, you have a tiny little mass that's formed underneath the skin called a microcomedone. And this tiny little microcomedone cannot be seen by the naked eye just by looking at the surface of your skin. Another little interesting thing is this microcomedone forms 90 days underneath the skin before you can actually see anything surface. All right, so we got that. Acne is retention hyperkeratosis. It forms 90 days underneath the skin. And then let's now talk about triggers. So we have triggers that come into play that then cause inflammation inside of the skin and impact this tiny little microcomedone that's underneath the surface. So what are these triggers? They are 1, hormone imbalance, 2, stress, and they can kind of be put into the same category. 3 are acne triggering foods, and 4, gut imbalance. There is kind of this 5th trigger, which are lifestyle factors that we'll talk about in other videos. But the 4 primary triggers that cause inflammation and take this little mass that's hiding underneath the skin and cause it to get big, red, and inflamed, and the stuff that drives you crazy, are these 4 triggers. Okay, so let's first talk about hormones. So the hormone trigger is specifically caused by elevated testosterone and low estrogen. This can be a genetic predisposition, that you're just predisposed for elevated testosterone. Frequently for females, when we see hormonal acne, which is the number one type of acne that we treat in our clinic, in our online program, It is a lot of times induced by a low-dose birth control pill, an IUD, an implant. All of these things are going to be driving down your estrogen, and then they're going to be increasing your testosterone. So there's just kind of a line in the sand somewhere where once the testosterone starts to increase too high, you're going to get that inflammatory response that then increases oil and the stickiness and causes the inflammation. Another common one that we see are fitness enhancements and even things like hormone replacement. A lot of females, especially in their 40s, are taking things like testosterone because our testosterone levels start to drop, and therefore testosterone increases, estrogen decreases, and we get acne. That is the result. So one of the very first things that you can do with hormonal acne is rebalance your hormones by intentionally increasing estrogen back to a balanced level and decreasing testosterone. And that can be done in numerous different ways. Okay, so our second trigger that we have is stress. So stress is a big trigger because, one, we're all pretty much stressed out. We're stressed out about our acne. If you're like me, it's a roller coaster when you have breakouts. And specifically what happens when you are stressed out is that, especially as females, it increases your androgen or testosterone levels. So we're back to the testosterone again. So I know that there's not an easy way to just get rid of all of the stress in your life, but one thing that you can do is when that stress is triggered, which is going to impact the adrenal glands, is that you can help rejuvenate and relax the adrenal glands through the use of herbal supplements. So I love, we have an adrenal formula, but through our Clove Hill brand, but even things like ashwagandha, holy basil, things like that are going to help to take that hit that the stress has on the adrenal glands that would normally spike the testosterone and androgen levels, and it helps to make that not as big of a spike, and it helps to level that out, and it helps the adrenal glands to just rejuvenate and get back to a healthy level. So that's how stress causes a breakout. I know that's a huge trigger for me in particular. And our next trigger, our third one, is diet. So there's tons of myths and misconceptions around diet. Dr. Fulton is my mentor, and he is the co-creator of Retin-A and benzoyl peroxide, and he dedicated his career and his life to acne. And through reading his book, I found out that it is actually, there's been more proven research that iodine or salt is more of an acne trigger than sugar. Of course, sugar is inflammatory, but iodine and salt in particular, so iodized salt will be excreted through the pores and then cause inflammation and causes a cascade of oil inside of the pore and also bacteria. So if you've been avoiding chocolate and greasy foods thinking that that is a cause of acne, you actually want to flip that belief and start to avoid any like really salty foods, like fast foods, canned foods, healthy foods too. So spirulina, chlorella, all those really nice healthy green drinks typically have added seaweeds to them, which are all acne triggers. Cow's milk dairy in particular is an acne trigger, but goat milk, for example, is not. So there are very specific foods that are acne triggering, and you might be really surprised what they are. Okay, so our fourth trigger is gut imbalance. So gut imbalance comes into play because our gut is it's the main area where our immune system is housed, and also our gut, when it is storing more bacteria, bad bacteria than good bacteria, that bad bacteria, when not moved through the colon fast enough, then starts to leach into our blood system. And then that can cause a whole cascade of even hormone imbalance because our hormones are stored in our blood. But here's the thing with gut imbalance, and this is why a lot of dermatologists are giving antibiotics, is that there is a good army of bacteria and a bad army of bacteria in our gut. So we don't have to completely get rid of the bad bacteria. As long as there's enough of the good guys, then there can be some of the bad guys. And the problem with antibiotics is that it's going to deplete the good and the bad. So you have nothing, which might actually help your acne. But when you come off of those antibiotics, because you don't want to be dependent on them or on them for a long time, if you don't replenish with probiotics, what's going to happen is that kind of like weeds growing in a garden after you've ripped out all the vegetables. All the weeds are going to grow back and all the bad bacteria is going to grow. So again, we don't need to completely get rid of all the bacteria. We just need to increase the good bacteria. And one of the best ways to do that is through the use of probiotics, unless you're eating a lot of naturally high probiotic foods like kimchi and sauerkraut and things like that. But even if you're eating or drinking, like with kombucha, a lot of probiotics, it's really good to supplement too, because you need at least 50 billion parts per billion in a probiotic to even get the good bacteria up to a decent level. So probiotics are awesome for this, and we definitely don't want to become dependent on antibiotics. All right, so we just talked about what acne really is. The key part is that first and foremost, it's a genetic predisposition. So if you don't have that retention hyperkeratosis gene, you can have imbalanced hormones, you can have gut imbalance, you can be eating sugary inflammatory foods or foods high in iodine rather, and you're not going to get acne. But if you first and foremost have that gene, then you really have to watch out for these other things. The third thing I wanted to mention is that to really treat acne, because we talked about these 4 triggers, one of the common mistakes that I see is that people are trying to get rid of their acne by just treating one of the triggers at a time. But in our phone consultations, we discover that most people have at least 2 to 3 of those triggers all happening simultaneously. So the key to getting rid of acne and clearing your acne or getting control of your acne, which would be a really great place to be, is that you have to treat all of those triggers simultaneously. So we want to rebalance hormones, rebalance gut, take out acne triggering foods, and help rejuvenate the adrenal glands all at the same time. And when we do that with a really great skincare regimen, then that is going to be the key to getting clear skin. All right, so do you know more about acne now than you did before you started watching this video? If so, go ahead and subscribe to my channel now. Then leave a comment below and let me know what specifically you learned new in this video. If you want more information like this about acne, go ahead and head on over to naturalacneclinic.com. I wish you well on your clearing journey.